Some players feel completely locked into one franchise. You look around the league and there are certain stars you just assume will never hit the market, no matter what happens. They're the faces of their organizations. The players fans associate with the city the moment their name comes up. But every now and then, circumstances start shifting behind the scenes, and suddenly a situation nobody expected begins to look possible. That's why what Shams Charania reported caught so much attention. He wasn't talking about just any player. He connected one of the most accomplished and hardest to read superstars of this generation to the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's the kind of report that immediately gets people talking. Because this isn't some random fan theory. This is a legitimate reported situation that could have major implications for the Luka Doncic era in Los Angeles. According to Shams, the Lakers have expressed genuine interest in exploring a trade for Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard. We're talking about a two-time Finals MVP and one of the premier two-way players of his generation potentially remaining in Los Angeles while switching sides to join Luka Doncic. The idea of Kawhi Leonard leaving the Clippers and walking into the Lakers locker room almost feels unreal. But once you look at what's happening with the Clippers and consider the type of player Luka thrives alongside, it's easier to understand why people view this as one of the most intriguing possibilities of the offseason. And the path to it is what makes the entire story so interesting. Now, I know the first thing some people will mention are Kawhi's age and injury history. We'll get to that, because those concerns absolutely matter. But before we do, it's worth understanding why a player of this caliber is even being discussed in trade conversations. For years, Kawhi has been the centerpiece of everything the Clippers built. Yet, over the last season, there were signs the organization was beginning to move in a different direction. At the trade deadline, they moved several important veterans, including their longtime center and starting point guard, signaling a shift toward a younger roster and a more future-oriented approach. That matters because Kawhi is entering the final season of his current contract and becomes eligible for an extension this offseason. Reports have suggested that any extension discussions could involve a sizable pay reduction because of where the Clippers are in their current timeline. And multiple insiders have indicated that if the two sides can't reach an agreement, the Clippers could explore trade options rather than risk seeing him leave without compensation. Put all of that together, a team leaning toward a rebuild, difficult contract talks, and a superstar approaching free agency, and suddenly a player once viewed as untouchable starts looking available. Of course, there are still major obstacles. Reports have also indicated that the Clippers owner has remained strongly opposed to moving Kawhi, and Kawhi himself is said to prefer staying in Los Angeles, so nothing is guaranteed here. But from the Lakers' perspective, that's where this gets especially interesting. If Kawhi's priority is remaining in Los Angeles, the Lakers can offer exactly that. And that's what makes the Lakers such a fascinating possibility here. If circumstances ever push the Clippers toward moving Kawhi Leonard, no other team can offer what Los Angeles can.
He wouldn't have to leave the city, change his lifestyle, or even learn a new arena. The Lakers play in the same building, which creates a situation that is completely unique compared to every other potential destination. Now, before we go any further, let's remember exactly who we're talking about. Because somewhere along the way, people almost got used to hearing Kawhi Leonard's name and forgot how incredible his resume actually is. This is one of the defining two-way players of his era, a six-time All-Star, a two-time NBA champion, and a two-time Finals MVP. Not many players can say they were the unquestioned best player on two championship teams, but Kawhi can. Offensively, he's been one of the most efficient scorers in basketball for years. His mid-range game is elite, he can space the floor, and when possessions get tight late in games, he's the kind of player who can still manufacture quality looks on demand. Defensively, his reputation speaks for itself. For a long time, opposing stars knew they could end up spending the night dealing with one of the most disruptive perimeter defenders the league has seen. And what makes this discussion even more compelling is that we're not talking about a player who has completely declined. At 34 years old, Kawhi put together one of the strongest seasons of his career, averaging close to 28 points per game while operating with remarkable efficiency and earning another All-NBA selection. The reality is simple. When he's available and healthy, Kawhi Leonard remains one of the premier players in the sport today. And that's where the Luka Doncic conversation becomes so interesting. Before we even get into fit, it's important to understand the level of winner we're discussing. Early in his career, Kawhi captured a championship while earning Finals MVP after helping slow down one of the greatest scorers the game has ever seen. Then, he accomplished something even rarer. He joined a different franchise and immediately helped deliver the first championship in that organization's history, collecting another Finals MVP in the process. 2 championships, 2 Finals MVPs, 2 different teams. Very few players in NBA history can match that kind of championship impact across multiple organizations. Over the years, he also built a reputation as one of the most dangerous postseason performers in basketball. The deeper the stakes, the better he seemed to become. Some of the most memorable playoff moments of his generation belong to him, and that level of big-game production is something teams spend years searching for. That's why reports connecting a player with this kind of track record to the trade market naturally become a huge story, especially when the team being linked is the Lakers, a franchise that measures success by championships. Now let's talk about Luka Doncic. As incredible as he is offensively, there are 2 things every roster around him needs. The first is high-level perimeter defense because opponents will always try to attack Luka defensively whenever they can. The second is another creator who can generate offense independently, take pressure off him, and keep the attack flowing when defenses load up against him. And that's exactly why Kawhi's name stands out so much in this conversation. He checks both boxes at the same time. That's why the basketball fit is what keeps drawing people back to this idea. Kawhi doesn't just bring star power to a Luka Doncic-led team.
He directly addresses the areas where Luka needs the most support. On one side of the floor, you're getting a player who can still take on elite perimeter assignments. On the other, you're getting a scorer capable of creating offense for himself at the highest level without needing to dominate every possession. That's a rare combination. You're essentially pairing Luka's greatest strengths with a player whose skill set helps cover many of Luka's biggest challenges. Picture the matchup problems that creates. Luka runs the offense, controls the pace, and forces defenses into impossible decisions. Meanwhile, Kawhi handles difficult defensive assignments and provides another trusted option when the game tightens up late. That isn't just a talented roster on paper, that's the foundation of a legitimate championship contender. Now, if we're talking about whether this could actually happen, the financial side becomes a huge part of the discussion. Kawhi is set to earn more than $50 million next season, which means any trade would require substantial salary matching along with meaningful assets going back the other way. There would be nothing simple about a deal like this. It would be one of those moves that reshapes an entire franchise. But historically, the Lakers have never been afraid to make aggressive moves when elite talent becomes available. And finding a second superstar to place next to Luka during his prime years is exactly the type of opportunity organizations wait for. The cost would be significant. The potential payoff could be even bigger. And when you start imagining the playoff version of this pairing, it's easy to understand why people are paying attention. We already know Luka can generate offense against virtually any defense. The question in postseason basketball is always what happens when opponents commit everything to slowing down your primary creator. That's where Kawhi becomes so valuable. If defenses overload toward Luka, Kawhi is fully capable of taking advantage. He doesn't need a perfect setup or a specific play call. He can create offense on his own and punish mistakes. Then on the defensive end, when a critical stop is needed, Kawhi gives you someone capable of matching up with the opposing team's best perimeter threat. Those are 2 of the hardest qualities to find in one player. So now you're talking about one superstar driving elite offense and another who can provide both scoring and defensive impact in clutch moments. That's the blueprint many championship teams have followed throughout the modern NBA. Another reason the fit works is because their games don't naturally compete for control. Luka thrives as a creator. Kawhi thrives as a finisher, scorer, and defender. Instead of taking away from each other, their strengths potentially work together, and that kind of balance is often what separates good teams from teams that can actually survive deep playoff runs. Now, with all that said, there are legitimate concerns that have to be addressed. The biggest one is health. There's simply no ignoring Kawhi Leonard's injury history. Over the years, availability has consistently been the question surrounding him, and that's a completely fair concern for anyone evaluating this possibility. At the same time, he appeared in 65 games last season and performed at an MVP caliber level when he was on the court. The argument from supporters would be that the Lakers wouldn't necessarily need him to play every game during the regular season. They would need him at his best when the postseason arrives. Managing his workload throughout the year would likely be part of that plan. So yes, there is risk involved.
But the possibility of pairing a healthy Kawhi Leonard with Luka Doncic is exactly why some people would consider that risk worthwhile. The other concern is age. Kawhi turns 35 this summer, and that's a valid point to bring up. However, he's also coming off of one of the most efficient offensive seasons of his career. There hasn't been clear evidence of major decline in his actual production. A lot of what makes him effective now is built around skill, decision-making, shot creation, and defensive instincts rather than relying entirely on elite athleticism. Those are traits that traditionally tend to hold up better over time. The final concern people bring up is the contract situation. Kawhi Leonard carries a massive salary, and because he's approaching the end of his deal, there's always the possibility that a team gives up significant assets without a long-term guarantee. That's a real consideration. But if you're the Lakers, your focus is maximizing the Luka Doncic championship window right now. For a player of Kawhi's caliber, even if you're only guaranteed a limited time frame, that's the type of gamble contenders often consider worth taking. And there's another factor working in their favor. Reports have consistently suggested that Kawhi wants to remain in Los Angeles, which at least gives the Lakers a realistic path toward keeping him beyond a single season. At some point, when a player fits this cleanly, you can't make every decision based solely on age or contract length. You have to look at the opportunity itself, because the Lakers aren't chasing respectable seasons, they're chasing championships. That's always been the standard. When a franchise acquires a talent like Luka Doncic in the middle of his prime, the mission becomes obvious: surround him with the best possible roster while that window is open. And the challenge is that the Western Conference doesn't give anyone an easy path. Every postseason run requires surviving elite teams, elite scorers, and multiple rounds of high-level competition. One superstar usually isn't enough. You need another player capable of swinging playoff games. You need defenders who can handle the toughest assignments. When healthy, Kawhi Leonard checks both boxes. That's why this conversation has become so compelling. If a player with 2 Finals MVPs and a proven championship resume actually becomes available, and he's playing for the team sharing your arena, that's not a scenario organizations can casually ignore. For a franchise with the Lakers' history, this is exactly the type of move that deserves serious consideration. Now, where do I stand on it? I think the appeal is obvious. If the Lakers were somehow able to pull off this trade, they'd be giving Luka a partner whose strengths line up almost perfectly with what he needs beside him: a perimeter defender capable of handling elite matchups, a scorer capable of creating offense without relying on Luka to set everything up, and all of it would stem from an unusual situation developing just a few steps away with the Clippers. Imagine the playoff version of that pairing: Luka controlling the game offensively, Kawhi taking on the toughest defensive responsibilities and delivering big baskets when possessions become difficult. The biggest question isn't the fit, it's the health. That's where the debate begins and ends. If Kawhi stays healthy, the upside is championship level. And historically, the Lakers have never been afraid to pursue that kind of ceiling.
Before I wrap this up, here's what I think many people are overlooking. The hardest player to acquire in today's NBA is a true two-way superstar whose game naturally complements your franchise cornerstone. Those opportunities almost never appear because teams rarely let those players leave. But occasionally, circumstances create an opening that nobody expected. A franchise starts moving in a different direction, contract negotiations become complicated, long-term plans change. Suddenly, a door opens that seemed permanently locked. That's why this Kawhi situation has everyone's attention. The Clippers appear to be navigating a changing future, while the Lakers happen to employ a superstar whose roster needs align almost perfectly with what Kawhi brings. Add in the fact that Los Angeles is reportedly where Kawhi wants to stay, and it's easy to understand why the Lakers continue to be connected to this possibility. When a player this accomplished potentially becomes available, and his skill set matches your star this naturally, you at least have to explore it. So, if we're simplifying the entire discussion down to its core, it really comes back to one thing. Luka Doncic is a generational offensive force who benefits most from elite perimeter defense and a second scorer capable of creating offense on his own. And that's really the heart of the entire discussion. You're talking about a 2-time Finals MVP who brings the exact 2 qualities most teams spend years trying to find around a player like Luka: high-level perimeter defense and the ability to create his own offense at an elite level. Very few players offer both. Then you add another layer to it: If Kawhi Leonard truly wants to remain in Los Angeles, the Lakers can offer something no other franchise can, a move that keeps him in the same city and essentially the same basketball environment he's already built his life around. That's part of what makes this situation so unusual. The risks are obvious. The injury history is real. The financial commitment would be enormous, but so is the upside. Because when you start talking about a healthy Kawhi next to Luka, you're talking about a pairing with legitimate championship potential. And whenever a player of that caliber potentially becomes available, the Lakers are naturally going to be involved in those conversations. Now, to be clear, none of this means a deal is done. There has been no report saying a trade is imminent, and there are still major hurdles standing in the way. I've said throughout this entire discussion that the concerns are legitimate. His age matters, his health matters, the cost matters, and reports have indicated that the Clippers owner is not eager to move him in the first place. All of those realities have to be acknowledged. At the same time, it's impossible to ignore the basketball side of it. The talent is undeniable. The fit next to Luka is incredibly clean. The Los Angeles connection is unique, and a player with Kawhi Leonard's resume rarely becomes part of trade discussions at all. That's why Shams Charania mentioning the Lakers in connection with this situation immediately grabbed attention. When you put together the potential fit, the championship upside, and the fact that both teams happen to be operating in the same city, it's easy to understand why so many people find the idea intriguing. It just feels like one of those moves that makes sense on paper. Now we'll see whether reality ever catches up to the idea. For the next few weeks, this is absolutely something worth monitoring, because contract situations can change quickly once negotiations reach a critical stage.
A scenario that seems unlikely one day can suddenly become very real the next. And if something does happen here, people are going to remember when these conversations first started. Imagine the storyline. The Lakers finding Luka Doncic a co-star without that player ever needing to leave the building. That's the kind of twist nobody could have predicted a few years ago. So now, I want to hear from you. If you're running the Lakers, do you make the move? Do you take the risk and pair a healthy Kawhi Leonard with Luka Doncic in pursuit of a championship? Or do the injury concerns, contract questions, and acquisition cost push you toward a safer option? Because this isn't a small decision. It's the type of franchise-shaping gamble that can define an era one way or another. What makes it even more fascinating is that both sides of the story are unfolding in Los Angeles. One organization is trying to build the strongest possible contender around Luka. The other is navigating questions about the future of the player it has built around for years. And somewhere between those two situations sits a possibility that seemed impossible not that long ago. I'll be paying close attention to every development, because if anything changes, this story could move very fast. And if it does, we'll have plenty more to talk about. Sometimes the biggest opportunities in the NBA come from circumstances nobody sees coming. A franchise changes direction, a contract situation becomes complicated, and suddenly a superstar once considered untouchable is being discussed in a completely different light. Those are the moments smart organizations prepare for. And if Kawhi Leonard ever truly becomes available, there won't be many teams watching more closely than the Lakers.